more topics in our chat. Well, your country, I mean, for example, your country is, for example, other country, USA or Austria or Germany, something like that. Why those countries don't accept NUG as a, oh, okay, go nice, go on live. Hi, everyone. I've invited 4 guests today to discuss some of the topics about NUG and some of our movement. So I think it's better that you introduce yourself. Could you please introduce yourself, Sue, Nimali Sue?
Okay, my name is Sue or Tasute. I live in the US. I live in Maryland, and I represent the Freedom, Justice, Equality team from Myanmar. And I'm the PR person. I am related to Ujotu. He is a famous movie star, director, and philanthropist. He is currently on the run from the Myanmar military junta. He's being hunted, and before he left, he asked me to represent him as like the voice for him, because he said he was against the Myanmar military, and so that's why I'm here today. Thank you for welcoming me.
Thank you, Nimali. Okay, Pyo Molly, can you please introduce yourself?
My name is Pyo. My name is Pyo Mankan. I'm from New York, Brooklyn. I've been organizing the protest with NYCBC in New York City like every week, and I'm one of the editors here.
All right, thank you so much. Michael, can you please introduce yourself?
Sure, my name is Michael, and I live here in Washington, D.C. I have been involved in one way or another with Free Burma movement since 2002 when I was an undergraduate, and I got involved. I worked full-time on it, doing grassroots lobbying at U.S. Campaign for Burma for a number of years. And now since the coup, I've been doing quite a bit of organizing here in D.C., particularly around Congress, but other things as well, like Chevron. So nice to meet all of you.
Thank you so much. Hi, Mr. Bauer. Now it's your turn. Thanks.
Yes, hi. Good day and evening or morning to everyone, wherever you are. My name is Gerd Bauer. I'm from Vienna, Austria. I lived in Myanmar for 2 years, from 2018 to 20, working first at the delegation of the European Union and then at the Australian embassy. Just to confuse everyone, I am Austrian, but I did work at the Australian embassy. Quite some interesting conversation with taxi drivers who I tried to explain this to. But anyway, I have returned from Myanmar about a bit more than a year ago, and I am now a historian at the University of Vienna, focusing on the history of human rights and democracy, and have been doing research on Myanmar as well. And since the coup, I've been quite active here with the local Burmese community, but also with other scholars around the world. Most recently, we drafted an open letter that you can read at scholarsformyanmar.org, which we're sending to different governments around the world, basically advocating for the NUG to be recognized as the legitimate government by other countries. Yes, and we have had some, of course, in Austria. I was also focusing on getting politicians here to look at Myanmar. First of all, it's not really a very well-known country, especially here in Central Europe, and we had a little success this week. Actually, we managed to have a meeting between representatives of the CRPH and the Austrian Parliament in a meeting together, and we hope that more will follow. Although we are not at the stage of official recognition yet, but I think it's a step-by-step process. Thanks for having me here.
Thank you so much. Now, first of all, I would like to discuss about the NUG as a legitimate government. We have tried to ask the whole world to accept our NUG as a legitimate government, but until now there is no real progress yet. So what is your opinion and what is your suggestion so that we will get the NUG as a legitimate government?
I can jump in from the US side and what I think
Sure.
at least the strategy in the US should be. So I think initially a lot of advocates who were trying to get the US to recognize the NUG as the official government, they went straight to the State Department, which makes sense because it's the State Department that gets to decide that if they will recognize it. But I don't think that's the greatest strategy, simply because the State Department is a rule following organization, and we're asking them to do something that's like a bit out of the norm. I think the strategy should be to get the Congress, which is a moralistic organization, to push the State Department to do it. And so I've been trying to get NUG recognition into this upcoming Burma bill. I mean, by I mean like lots of people I know in here in the US. And the strategy has been to push particularly Senator Cardin, who's in Maryland, which we're lucky lots of Burmese live in Maryland, to put that in the bill because he's writing it. So yeah, I think the best chance it has anyway is to get the the US Congress to push the US State Department. Again, the Congress is moralistic, the State Department is legalistic. I would also say that I think if the US leads on this, that would make a big difference. The US, I think, needs to take sort of the hardline, like pro-democratic position. And then it could be in the position to maybe push ASEAN or European countries. But I think if the US doesn't do it, the US is just like a 10,000-pound gorilla. So it's unfortunately or fortunately, it's a little bit on us to lead on this. So those are my feelings, but I'd love to hear what others have to say.
So how about others who live in US? Is it correct that we are doing, our strategy is wrong and we need to change our strategy to push to Congress more than the other area? Is it correct? How about Dasu and Pugh? How do you think?
Go ahead, Pio, because I'm working with Mike on this, so I think we would say something very similar.
I agree with him that I agree with him.
Right.
It seems like we're all in agreement, so there's no debate.
Okay. All right. How about Georg?
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak much for the yes. We have sent that letter that I mentioned before to Congress before in April already when they had that hearing on Burma. We're trying to send it again now. I have not lived in the U.S. I'm not too familiar with U.S. politics, but I would agree with Michael and the others that Congress is more of an approachable, I guess. Well, although I mean, I think there is no harm done if you at the same time also approach the State Department. But I think more realistically, I mean, this is a step-by-step process. I would not expect any countries to like switch from one day to the other to say, okay, we recognize the NUG as the official government. If I can talk about, I think in Europe, you can probably say it's a bit similar, although it's maybe more complicated because if we say Europe, we have only in the EU 27 different member states. And we've also, so when we send a letter, for example, we send it both to the Foreign Ministry, to the Prime Ministers, and to Parliament. We're targeting in parliaments, we are targeting the Foreign Affairs Committees. So similar to the US, I guess, what you're doing. And I think it's this step-by-step process where you need to build up a relationship, because we also have to remember that most of these people, they don't have any clue about Myanmar, right? There are a few congressmen or parliamentarians and single politicians that understand, but even the foreign ministries of many countries, especially smaller European countries that have, Austria has an embassy in Thailand that covers Myanmar plus 3 other countries. So the basic knowledge about Myanmar is very low in many countries. So I think bold steps and also interest are quite low in many countries. So it's this, you have to establish some basic knowledge, you have to establish some ties, and I think this meeting from parliamentarians to parliamentarians is important. Why you should also, of course, engage the foreign ministries at the same time. And it depends very much on the countries. I mean, we've seen in the Czech Republic, for example, they, due to their historic connection that they have, interestingly, to Myanmar, that they have been the most, I think, probably even more so than the UK, supportive of the energy. And that's a good thing, because then you can use that as an example to approach other countries. You can say, look, and that's what we did as well, because you can say that, okay, the Czech Republic has not fully recognized the energy, but they have had more stronger engagement and more public engagement, more commitment so far than others. And then you can take it from there, you know. Now we could try, for example, to approach the German parliament here in Europe by saying, well, look, the Austrians met them, so shouldn't that be a reason for you to meet them as well? So I think we have to drop the expectation that this will happen quickly, and not get desperate in when it doesn't happen quickly. And
Sorry for
I think
interruption.
another,
So
yeah.
I have acknowledged that there must be some criteria to be a, I mean, to be a legitimate government. For example, we must own some territory, and we must have an army. So something like that. Is it true? I mean, how do you think?
I mean, you can from a the point is that there are no rules for this, right? I mean, you can, what you named, yes, they are generally, but usually states and governments will say that they will recognize states, not governments, which is the basic answer you will get when you advocate for recognition. And so, but yes, some of the criteria you mentioned definitely important. But for, you know, it depends from which angle you view this, and I think in that regard,
criteria,
it is.
I mean, everyone can be a government. I can have a own government as well. So I mean, there must be some criteria which needs to be a government. So territory is one government, because some of the people criticize our NUG government as an online government, because they say the NUG has no influence over the public. Public support NUG, but they cannot really work together with the public who lives in Myanmar. So they are like the online government. Yes. So
I have a great rebuttal for that, because last couple of conferences ago, I'm not going to name names, but I did get into a debate with somebody about somebody calling the NUG a shadow government, and not the people's government, and an online government. Well, they have to be on the run. They have to be semi-online, because there's
I was going to say that.
Yeah, there's fear, there's danger. You know, like personally, my cousin, her name is Kimama Myo, and she's with the NUG, and she has been on the run, and she has been bouncing from place to place, and also strategizing as she's bouncing. They don't really have like they're going from safe house to safe house, and from like one family that's like risking their life to take care of like one of the members of the NUG to the next. And so while people might call it a shadow government, an online government, it's a people's government, because the NLD elected the NUG. And there's NLD members that are imprisoned. You know, so when it's such a crisis, you know, you can call it an online government, but the online part is what is making this revolution so successful. If there was no online component, it would be what happened in the Saffron Revolution, or what happened in '88, which is total darkness and silence, you know, and like internal resistance, but no real access to the outside world. And so I think the online part is very important, but it is also the people's government. And they should be representing the people if, you know, that's what the people want, right? Because there was an overwhelming result in the vote, before the coup.
So how do you think about Micah and Georg?
If I can just quickly add to that, I think the other part that is important to point out here is also that the SAC, the State Administration Council, does not have effective control over the country, right? I mean, almost no one's going to school. They can't even roam the streets anymore since people have started to defend themselves. Now, of course, I mean, we shouldn't fool ourselves either. They have more control over certain state institutions than does the NUG. But I think it's important when you enter these debates that you also point out that they don't have effective control. They do not have effective control over the country. They don't have effective control over the population. They don't listen to them. They don't have effective control over the economy. They're destroying the banking sector and etc. So this is not effective control either. So you have an open situation where two governments battle for control, and the second part is also that, as Masu already pointed out, this is a government that came out of widely acknowledged elections, and even under the 2008 constitution, although the NUG and the CRPH have declared that it's abolished, which is on the one hand a good thing, but also on the other hand, even under that constitution, the coup was illegal. And thus you have an actual president who is the legitimate president even under the 2008 constitution, and his government is the legitimate government, and that's an important factor. And there was something else I wanted to add to that, but it has escaped my mind right now, so I'll leave it to that for now.
Yeah, I just want to say I agree with that, Sue and George. I think and I think it's just up to us as advocates to make these arguments to especially if you're here in the US with me, to the Congress, and in editorials and however we can get this out, because to some extent, like, it's international norms are what you make them, and we're in a position to shape things if we really want to, if we really push this. Again, I don't think it would be that hard to get the US Congress at least to say they acknowledge it, and then it's a matter of pushing the State Department on it. And if I say there was some frustration, it's because I've been trying to convince a lot of people to push the US Congress to do that over the last couple months, but I think it's very doable. So
Okay, just now, Bauer, Bauer, sorry, I really don't know how to pronounce your first name, Bauer is okay because it's German, so I can pronounce German name, but the friend is not George. The friend is pronounce something, right? How to pronounce correctly?
It's
Georg. Okay.
But if you say George,
so sorry.
No, it doesn't. It's fine. I'm used to that. It's easier for everyone.
Right.
It's fine. Yeah.
Just now you told us that not many people know about Myanmar. They don't know where the Myanmar is actually. So we did. Myanmar's community did a lot of protesting and demonstration around the whole world. So do you think that it is really effective? Can they really get the awareness from the other countries?
Yeah, I mean, the protests are one thing. I don't know how it's been in other countries. Unfortunately, in Austria, the protests themselves have not gained that much attention, although some politicians have taken part that we have invited. On the other hand, we've had as much coverage about Myanmar as we could get. I think it has been in media for since the coup. It has died down a bit now, but it's much more than before. And this was actually like what I heard from talks I had with officials, that they say, oh, we have to do something because it's been in media, and so there seems to be sympathy for Myanmar, so we have to take some position on this. So so that's actually important. So I think we should not only focus on protests, which are important, but also on engaging journalists. And I'm not talking about those journalists, that are based in the Burmese journalists, of course, but also the international journalists that have been working on Myanmar for a long time, but also those journalists now here that sit in the foreign correspondence or like the foreign sections of their newspapers and suddenly have to write about Myanmar. And if you engage them and give them solid information and point out some stories that they can write to, we have done this here in Austria, for example, and they've written some very interesting stories about if you give them the opportunity, because they don't have these connections usually if they're not Myanmar specialists. But here in Austria, newspapers are small. It's a small country. They sometimes have to cover all of Asia, for example. So,
All right. So
I
I have a
it's good
question.
to contact them.
So you mean we need to cover up the media as well, media in each country, right? So for example, I don't know how about Austria. For example, in Germany, they don't really read newspaper anymore. Now everybody wants to go online, even 50, 60 years old, because they want to save the earth. So how do you think about those things? Were we really effective to conduct this journalists?
Yeah, I don't think it changes much, because the same, at least here, the same stuff that appears in print appears online. So I think what I said before comes to online stuff as well.
Okay. So how about in US? Do we really need to cover up? Do we still need to cover up this media session? Because I understand that a lot of area in New York, in USA are, protesting. So New York, and other Chicago, something like that. I saw a lot of Myanmar protesting all around this US. Do you think that we still need to cover up the media?
I'll let Tatsu and Pio answer about the protests. And there have been all over the country. I would say, like, to some extent, we don't have to. Not everybody has to know about Myanmar for us to accomplish our goals, right? And I think that's something to keep in mind. And in the U.S., there are some very key people who do know a lot about Myanmar, including Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, and Dianne Feinstein, and he's a powerful senator and stuff. So I think that the State Department, the U.S. foreign policy apparatus, is increasingly looking eastward when it's thinking about its foreign policy goals. So I think in terms of just like the power that the U.S. yields diplomatically and financially, we don't actually have to convince all that many people, right? I mean, the concentration of power maybe is a bad thing in general, but in the sense that maybe it's a good thing. So, or at least it just means that our targets are small. But I think that, but yeah, I also think media engagement is very important, and we all should be doing it. Protests are one way to do it, but they're only one way to do it, right? So there's a lot of other ways to engage the media.
Pure and Sue, how do you think our demonstration, whether or not our demonstrations really effective in US, and do we still need to cover up the media? What is your?
I think we need more media support, because we've been protesting for more than 4 months now in New York, and in many countries too. So while we protesting, with the media, when the media came, most of the people try to know it. So every week we protest, more people know it. Why the media post something? Because many media got more followers and stuff. So right now, we got more people to join the protest, and we can let the other people know too, the congressman and the other stuff too. So we need a media support. I just want to say that we need media.
So I'm gonna just speak about the media aspect. Sometimes I've been talking to different media organizations, and unless they are specifically covering Myanmar, most people don't know what's going on. And I agree with Mike Hack. To get things accomplished, you don't necessarily need everybody to know. Also, slightly would like to add something else too. That I think that to pressure Congress, I think that the U.S. citizens can we have a more power being in the seat of power. And most people don't understand how much power their citizenship holds. And you don't even have to be a citizen, obviously, because of Simon Bellenese, and he's been accomplishing so much without citizenship on behalf of Myanmar. But anyways, yeah, most people in the world don't know about Myanmar, and if they do, there's a lot of confusing terms. There's a lot of concerns about Rohingyas, and I think that has been stopping help from coming to Myanmar. And I think that was the goal of Damaro, or the Myanmar junta. What was happening was, after the country was dark again, the Myanmar military was broke, and so they needed money. And to get money, they were selling lumber, they were selling jade, they were selling oil, and they had to open up the country a little bit with a partial democracy. Also, the Myanmar military, as we all know, they don't really have an original idea. And so because they don't have an original idea, they copied, oh, okay, the whole world has been slightly Islamophobic. And so let's lean towards that. Let's start with the genocide of the Rohingya people, because the military had the control of the weapons. Aung San Suu Kyi did not. But they figured out that if they held the Islamophobic angle, that because she was the figurehead, that she would be blamed. And that is exactly what happened with the rest of the world, thinking the Nobel Peace Prize winner was for the genocide and the suffering of her own people. People even called for the recall of her Nobel Peace Prize. And this is what is directly affecting people that do know about Myanmar, Congress people, Senate, and that is something that we're trying to change with conversations. And Michael Hack and Ma Mime has been working really hard to change that narrative, to change that paradigm, and to say, to show a different perspective of what the people want, and particularly with the Rohingya case, how in CDM there's a lot of Rohingya people that are joining with the CDM movement. There's people with the three fingers, and the reason being is because they also support NUG. And so we have to show that we are truly united. And I think with the media, that's the perspective that we need to highlight more, so that we can put more pressure on first world countries like the US. Thank you.
Yeah, I would echo that. I mean, the number one thing you hear from staffers in Congress is the NUG inclusive? What about their Rohingya? And that's from Republicans as well as Democrats. That's their primary concern, I would say, about it. And so that the recent statement that the NUG would abolish or work to abolish the 1982 citizenship law, I think is very, very important, and something that we all, I think, need to talk about and center. And it's good for Burma, it's good for advocacy. I would also just add one other thing about protests. I mean, you're sort of framing that a protest is successful if it attracts media. But I've found the most successful thing about protests here in DC and New York that I've been to is they're giant networking opportunities, right? So I now know people in Indiana, people in Iowa, people all over the US who I can then call on to call Congress. Oh, we just talked to the Maryland senator. Can you talk to the Iowa senator? What is the Iowa senator thinking about this? So I wouldn't just gauge their success based on the media coverage, but also like the networks that they're forming, which I think are very, very important for social movements.
All right. Yeah. So, mhm.
Briefly, so I think even without much media coverage, we in DC got the Chevron, the Chevron lobbyists to change locations. We only did two protests there, two physical protests there, and we had enough social media presence that Craig Hall, the CEO of the lobbyists of Chevron, he just completely got his name out of LinkedIn and his picture off of it because we put a picture of him on a donkey pinata, and we were
That means it's successful, right?
yeah,
Somehow. Mhm.
yeah, because you know what a donkey is. And we were and then so we also got them to change the location. They even removed the plaque from the wall. And yeah, Michael Hack and I and Mimin and I we made $100 US bill, like a fake US bill with Craig Hall's face on it, and it was talking about Chevron's money being lined with Myanmar blood, and we put it in replacement, and like that, you know, that has been causing more pressure. A lot of social media people getting on Chevron left and right, and now that's hopefully like that's affecting you know, their relationship with MOGE and the US popular opinion on Chevron. So like we don't necessarily need the media. We have like, you know, social media, and that's like the power of the people, and it's very powerful.
All right. So I want to recap this one. So effectiveness of our movement, it's effective, right? So our people demonstrate in each country that is effective. To add more, if it is good if we can add some more media coverage, that will be more effective, just like Rohingya case in other country. I mean, like previous time. Okay, so by saying Chevron, I have another topic about it. Normally, government always condemn about Myanmar military coup and how they notice a lot of people are dying because of military, so they condemn about it. Every government in this whole world condemn about it, but they still working together. For example, Total and Chevron, they still working somehow together. They just postpone the payment only. You get what I mean? They're still working together, and some of the business in Australia and other countries as well. So, why is this the reason that they cannot accept the NUG as a legitimate government because they're still working together with the military government?
I would just say governments are not unified entities, right? So in some senses, you know, you have the U.S. has strong support for democratic values, at least that it espouses. But also, like the U.S., like Chevron's a very, very powerful a company in the United States. And but I would say this about Chevron: we have gotten closer to getting them to stop than we ever had before. We had a letter sent to the administration, signed by 2 Republicans and 4 Democrats in the Senate, so the more powerful body, calling for MOGE to be sanctioned. The current bill that Cardin is writing also calls for sanctioning of MOGE, which is the Myanmar oil and gas, which is what a large amount of Chevron's payments like go to, and that goes to the military-owned company. So we're getting there. I think we need a lot of pressure. I think if the U.S. Is able to sanction MOGE, if we're able to get past this Chevron lobby and horrible people like Craig Hall, the Chevron lobbyist, I think because of a number of like U.S. economic hegemony, right? Like 88% of international transfers have the U.S. dollar on one side. Like US companies dominate nearly every sector of the international market. Like 50% of world capital is in US hands, or globalized capital is in US hands. So it's very important that the US does this. And we've heard this from our friends in France, that US sanctions are threatening the Total in a way that maybe even French sanctions aren't. So like because the US like really has its finger on the plumbing of the global economy, I think it's very, very important that the US pushes on this. I think it should be a primary goal of advocates in the US.
Josh.
Yeah, I mean, this is a difficult good question. My feeling is more that the inaction is more due to not knowing what's really going on, maybe also not wanting to do anything and being overwhelmed. But I mean, of course, these factors also play a role. I mean, I'm no expert on these especially on these oil companies. But I understand that we all understand that the revenue that the SAC gets out of this is extremely important, and that, of course, Chevron or Total want to do their business. I mean, I don't think we should believe their human rights talk, and some of the reports that they commission pay some human rights expert on that. And I mean, this is nonsense. They want to make money, right? So yeah, when we talk about Australia, for example, which I don't know what the hell is going on with Australia. It's absolutely ridiculous what they've done or what they've not done, and it can't all be because of Sean Turnell being in prison, because they haven't gotten him out either, right? So now they're just doing nothing, even less than before, which is horrible. And I'm pretty sure that many people in the Australian embassy in Yangon are not that happy with that either. But yeah, so I'm afraid I can't say much more than that. But I think it shows that pressure works. I mean, we are not where we want to be yet with these companies and with these sanctions. But I mean, the consideration by Congress to put that into a bill is already shows that that these actions can work, and we should continue to do that and pressure for that.
How about Sue and Pio?
Go ahead, Pio.
No, you go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're saying the same thing. The pressure is like really important, and I think that with the thing is, the gas companies provide like roughly like 70% of the Damaro, the junta, the Myanmar military's income, and basically it's it's a financial war, right? The NUG is broke, and so is the SAC, and so whoever has more money can provide more aid for people, can provide have more weapons for the NUG side for defense, for the SAC side for just genocide. So I mean, we need to like, it's wherever the money goes, right? And so if we do attack the oil industry, then that is like really important. Another thing is like the gem industry, but there's a lot of sanctions, in the US and in other places around the world. But the problem is, like, the slight problem is with the gem side is because China is in cahoots with the Myanmar military, like we've seen in the past, the Chinese will get jade and teak and amber and whatever else, precious jewels, and they would call it Chinese, even though it was smuggled into China from Myanmar. So that like is like a very small way of getting through the sanctions. since we've been talking about oil, I'm just going to talk about other things. There's also access to the Indian Ocean that the Chinese want. And so, you know, that's why it's really powerful for other allies, for more democratic leaning allies, for more humanitarian allies, because I know the Chinese and Russia are backing the Myanmar military. Also, I think like another ally that's underlooked that we need to try to cultivate is Thailand, because like many people are running from Myanmar into Thailand, and there's been a lot of issues with that. And I know the Thai government currently has been leaning towards the Myanmar military. And so if we figure out a way to provide more power from the US towards the NUG, then the Thai government will follow, because the US is such a huge world power and does influence Thailand greatly. And so that would help a lot of the victims running into Thailand as well. So I'm just speaking about other things besides gas because everyone has been speaking about it. Thank you.
Just now Michael has mentioned as that we need a lot of pressure for those kind of Chevron or Total, whatever. What kind of pressure will you suggest?
I think there's two avenues, or I guess maybe three, and we've been using all of them. One, like just sort of like the shaming them with protests. The New York Times, on sort of unrelated to us, we chatted with them a little bit, but I think they did this by their own volition. Did a great expose about the Chevron's lobby and how they're working behind the scenes to try and undermine U.S. sanctions. So that's sort of like shaming, I think, is very important. I think that to like get the government to tell Chevron they can't do what they're doing. And that's a legislative angle. I think that's the most effective. And then third, there's shareholder pressure.
All right.
So, yeah.
Okay. So I mean, other country might get this idea. 3 facts they can consider it. Okay. Just now, by solving the problem in financial, for example, the sanctions are effective, right? So we are solving the problem in financial field, diplomacy, just now Bawa have suggested. How about the PDF case? As a foreigner, I mean, not Myanmar citizen, do you guys encourage this approach via PDF?
Yeah, we need PDF need many support too. Like I have like many of my friends like who from PDF, like who go to PDF, like, and they're like we don't have like enough weapons and stuff. So like we need, I don't really know about this, like you guys talking about like the why or something, like like I don't know, but like I don't really know that much. But PDF, like we need many stuff to make the army. And like we can't, like they can't show up too. Like many of our leaders are arrested, and like they are not in the city too. Like they don't even have an internet and stuff. So that's too hard to make an army, to make it strong.
All right. So how about Josh and Michael? Do you think that solving the problem, because I mean other people doesn't really want to encourage solving the problem by against something like that, stuff like that. So do you think that we should yeah, Pure?
We gotta solve the problem by game right now, because like we've been protesting for 4 months, and like
and nothing shake the Honda.
You got right, like we pay respect to them, and like we stay protesting right now, but they didn't show the respect, and so we gotta attack them. Like they won't give up, so we gotta attack them again. And like not only with again, like we gotta support with like many stuff. Like we gotta use weapons, we gotta do our legitimate government and many stuff. Like we need many support from other country and our citizens. So So like, so we must win this, like when we got everything fully.
You means we need to approach in every aspect, financial, diplomacy, and something like that. How about foreigners? I mean, Josh and my girls are foreigners, so let's listen how they think about it. Well, they encourage us to do that.
That's a tough question here. I
Uh-huh.
would never discourage somebody from doing what they think they need to do to get their freedom. That's what I would say.
Uh-huh. How about Josh?
Yeah. So I mean, as Michael said, especially I think for, you know, I've been thinking about this a lot, and you know, because I'm sitting here in comfortable Central Europe. You know, I have like, I can do whatever I want. So I thought, like, if I encourage violence, you know, I will not be, you know, I'm not taking the risk. I'm not taking these decisions to, because if you take violence at some point, innocent people will also die, even from this sex side, so to say. You will have, and so on. And so I was, until about the, let's say end of March, I was quite skeptical. For me, the turning point was 27th March. And I had discussions with Burmese friends before that, but I think the point is, it's good that they stayed nonviolent for that long, because it gave them a moral upper hand and showed that we tried. But for nonviolence protests to work, you need, and that's a bit, I think, what Byominkan was saying before. You need an opponent that respects your humanity and your life and your dignity, you know. But if your opponent has no respect for all of that and has no problem to use snipers to shoot teenagers that run away in their heads, you know, that you can't win that by nonviolence. And you know, it just doesn't work, I think. And then I also thought, like, if I discourage violence on the other hand, but violence is actually needed as part of the struggle. I'm not saying it's also what Kopio said before. It's not the only thing. The CDM it's still, I think, the most crucial thing that the resistance needs to keep alive. But it's all together. And if I at the same time then discourage an important part of that, I'm also encouraging, like, people to get shut down, right? If I tell them, no, don't use violence, don't resist, then I'm basically telling people, let them shoot you in the head for another 4 months, right? So I think that we can't do that either. And I think it's pretty obvious that this is needed. And I mean, you could already see. I mean, back in, what was it, in April, the soldiers were going around the streets and calling everyone names and saying, "Come out if you dare to die." Now they're hiding behind sandbags and can't go around like this that easily anymore, right? So it's already showing some effectiveness, and you see how they are stretched thin already by just the KIA, the KNU doing some attacks, and the people in Chin, I mean, giving them a really hard time with these muskets, basically these Tumi guns that are 150 years old technology or something like that. So I mean, I think it is, I'm not going to lie, I think it is necessary, and it's good that people are taking up arms. Then the question is, though, how do we frame this when we advocate in different countries, and how does that sound, you know? And for example, for the case of Austria is a neutral country, and it's sort of part of the national identity here that we are neutral. Can have a whole discussion how useful or not this is in general, but I'll spare you the Austrian politics part. But it's a fact. People here usually, no, violence is bad in any case. I mean, we live here, as I said, in one of the most prosperous countries in the world, and have our peace, and we can't really imagine that this is necessary anymore. So I can't, like, approach the government here or the public and say, listen, we need money to buy weapons for the NUG and PDFs. I can't do that here. I can defend the violence. I will defend the violence. I will not lie in that sense. But you know, we have to be smart in how we approach governments. But I also, you know, and I hope, if we're talking about strategy and tactics that PDFs could and should use, depends whether they are in urban areas or on the countries or in hills. It's very, very, very different. But I think, without going into too much detail in a public debate, I think that they need to be also creative in how they can inflict damage on soldiers and the SAC without weapons. And I think there are ways to that, and there are many many historical role models like the French resistance during World War II that I think they could have a look at. But that's maybe more for a discussion that is that is not public.
So do you have anything to say?
Yes, I mean, obviously, like everyone has been saying, for nonviolence to work, you have to the opposing side has to have some type of moralistic standing, right? So some type of quote unquote honor. So like people that are running away, people that are surrendering their arms, or people that are unarmed, theoretically should not be shot at. But that's not how the Myanmar military is going with this. And the whole world, for the most part, believes in self-defense in some type of capacity or another. Like, I don't know. It's hard to ask people that are dying and being tortured and being raped and everything like that, to just, I guess, like turn the other cheek, and that there would be no people left, and I don't know, because I've been speaking to old 1988 generational leaders, and back in the day, they were saying that they tried the peaceful method and they would get shot at, and not only would they get shot at, but they would just get gunned down from every direction. So anyone who was running would be dead. Even Red Cross members that went to help the victims would get shot. Me personally, 4 years ago, when I was working, not working, volunteering with the free funeral service, and the KNU, the K ambulance service, I personally had to pick up bodies of innocent victims. There was this one woman who was in Yeson, who she refused to stop teaching because there's a war zone. And in that war zone, there was a lot of children idling, and she decided to teach. And the Myanmar military warned her and said, hey, like, you can't teach these children. And she felt like the potential of, of their intellect waning. They're just idling there. And so she decided to teach, and her friend was there to watch her. And both of those ladies were raped brutally by many soldiers. And one of them was raped with a machete, and I had to go pick up their bodies. And that is the ruthlessness of the Myanmar junta. And this was before the coup. In different tribal countries that are not considered as important, and it's ridiculous that that type of inhumanity can exist. The Myanmar military has broken 10 of the 11 Geneva laws. So I literally do not understand how people are asking for nonviolence, because nonviolence would be nice. With India, it worked because there was a slight consciousness, a slight care for the human life. But with the Myanmar military, that doesn't exist. They don't even care about the underling soldiers that are there. A lot of them are starving themselves, and they've been robbing temples for food, and peeling off gold, for money. And it's so people that don't even take care of their own people, it just doesn't make sense. There's no moralistic standing. So with that, you can't reason with someone that is not looking at you like a human being.
Yeah,
So,
can I just one small
Sure,
thing
sure,
that would
sure.
also add, if you have discussions with people in Europe or something, I mean, our liberty here and our democracy did not arrive because we protested you know, we went to the streets against the Nazis. Speaking of Austria and Germany now, no, we got it because the Americans, the British, the French, and the Russians liberated us, and tens of thousands. I think 10,000 soldiers died only to liberate the city of Vienna, where I live in. So we have our freedom as well because other people used violence to get rid of people who do not understand another language. Unfortunately, of course, there are some examples of non-violent. I mean, Gandhi and so on. But I mean, again, if you have an opponent that does not understand the language and interprets it just as a sign of weakness, if you don't use guns yourself, like the Damadois, then I don't think that can work on its own.
So I want to recap this one. So as a Myanmar citizen, we have acknowledged a lot of brutality about Myanmar military before even coup. For now, most of the foreigners previously recommend us to go non-violence way. But now I understand that most of them understand the situation and they won't oppose us to do this PDF way, right?
I don't know about the general public yet. This is people who deal with me and Mike are people who deal with Myanmar a lot. So I think that it will still require some good advocacy and information for people for the general public and politicians to understand that. I would not say that has been fully accepted yet, unfortunately.
All right. All right. So that's tough.
Although I must say that, for example, I remember I spoke to one politician who came to our protest recently, and he was quite. Well, he wasn't shocked when I said, well, I think if people get shot in the head by snipers, they have a right to defend themselves. So he was like, yeah, okay, that sort of makes sense. So it's not hopeless, but I don't think we are there yet.
So in European country, most of the European doesn't really like the violence, doesn't really encourage the violence. But I understand that most of the US citizens understand our country much more than European countries, because European countries doesn't really encourage this violence attack or violence approach. So how do you think, Josh, how can we approach this European Union or Parliament?
In general, or about the violence part?
In general, about.
I think so. We've done this again. We have written to the European Parliament, to the Foreign Affairs Committee and the Subcommittee on Human Rights, and to the European External Action Service. Now the EU is a bit complicated, and just quickly, just that everyone's on the same information level. The European Union has a common foreign policy that works through the Council of Foreign Ministers. So they get together once a month, I think, and they take decisions, unfortunately on a consensual basis. So everyone has to agree, which is extremely annoying and is slowing things down and is a bit useless for having a common foreign and security policy. But this is how it works right now. So if you want to influence the EU, you also have to go through the national governments. So when we approach the Austrian government, for example, we also push them to have this position within the EU. So I don't think that there will be any country within the EU who is going to take a decision on recognition of the NUG by itself. It will be a common decision, at least by a group of countries. That was the case in with Venezuela, for example. Although, as I said, the Czech Republic has taken a first big step.
Okay, I think the Czech Republic, some of the people say that Czech Republic really encourage our NUG government because first of all, they don't really have anything to do with Myanmar military. They don't have any politic or diplomatic relationship. Second, they say that the Czech Republic doesn't really have any authority in European Union. So no matter how much Czech Republic is given any favor to Myanmar citizens, that don't really work. Is it true?
Well, I mean, the point is, technically the Czech Republic's voice in purely legal terms is as big as the German voice, because the way this council works is every foreign minister or every country has one voice. So if there is no difference in that. Now, of course, realistically, what Germany, France will say is much more important. But at the same time, I mean, you can have coalitions of smaller countries that, I mean, of course, most countries in Europe, I would say, don't have much economic interest in Myanmar. But what you can use this Czech example for is to push others to go into that direction. You know, as I said, like step by step, you can make use of that example and say, like, look what the Czechs are doing. Why are you not doing that as well? And can push. And this is all a process that is tiring and will take time, much more than we like it to take. But this is just a fact. Let me just add another part about what I wanted to say about the European Parliament. The European Parliament, unfortunately, does not have a say in foreign policy, in that sense that they can make binding resolutions. So if they say recognize the NUG, they can do that, but it will not have effect until, as I said, the Council of Foreign Ministers take that decision, or the countries on their own. However, that has the advantage again that they can be a bit more bold, because they can make statements without having to fear the consequences, so to say. So, and it is an important symbolic step for whatever the European Parliament does. So approaching parliamentarians is very important. It's one of the focus that I would have here now as well, to make the parliament do something. And that, again, depends also on people in different countries that can approach their, because in the European Parliament, we vote, like there's a number of Austrian MPs in there. I think it's like 19. The whole parliament has 700 people. So it's, for me, it's easier to approach the Austrians, of course. So that, again, has to come from different parts of Europe. But I think that would be a good initial step to take to get the European Parliament to do get some nice or useful resolutions out.
Pio, do you want to say something?
Okay, I'm really sorry that I gotta go to my brother's school. My younger brother, like, he have a graduation today. Like, I'm really sorry.
Oh, sure, no problem.
He have a
I hope
graduation.
he'll have a nicer gown that Minao Lang got in Russia.
So, Michael, you how about, I mean, seen as a third party to European Union? Do you really think that our European Union is stepping somewhere? Or we are doing nothing at all?
Well, I'll default to you guys at the European Union. I've mostly just been following what's happening here in the US, so I can't really comment. So yeah, my apologies.
So, do you have any option? Do you have any opinion about it?
Not, I mean, like, I agree with, oh my God, I don't want to mispronounce your name. Georg? Did I say that right? Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think it would just be parroting what he's saying. So I would also like to opt out, I guess, because I'm more familiar with the US policies, because Mike Hack and I have been working towards, like, putting pressure on the US.
Okay, this is the last topic. What will you do if this is your country? How will you get back your country from Honda?
It is my country.
My country.
So I was born there, and so what I'm doing is I literally quit my job. I had 2 jobs, one as a teacher and one as a neuromuscular medical massage therapist. Because being a teacher, you don't get paid that much. So I was doing both. And I quit both of those jobs, and I started to network with a lot of activists and try to put pressure. We have ground teams inside Myanmar. And so there's things that most people will not know unless you do directly talk to ground team members and talk to other ground team members. And there's this, like, huge, vast network. And so so with that, we've been sending supplies, like money, technology for bulletproof vests. I know personally that like a while ago, there's a young boy whose life was saved because of this bulletproof vest technology that we sent over. And so that, stuff like that, that's what we've been doing. We've been sending money for the families of the victims of genocide. So some of those victims are breadwinners, or they're in school, and so they have no way of burying their lost loved ones. And so with the free funeral service that my uncle held for the whole country, that was like one main goal he had was disease prevention. And there's a pandemic going on with COVID, not that many vaccines being rolled out, plus a lot of bodies that are there, and people are scared to go outside. There's like not, so with that, we're helping with funeral services, we're helping with food, access to food, since the monetary is going down. And so people that have like quit their jobs for the CDM, they're really suffering. And so people go days without food. And so that's where we're doing fundraising here. We're doing different demonstrations every weekend, at least every Saturday at least. And on an intellectual level, we've been pressuring different Congress people to sponsor and advocate for Myanmar. So that's what we've been doing. That's I don't know, because I'm from Myanmar, so that's my perspective.
Michael, if there is a coup in US, what will you do? How will you get back your own country?
There almost was,
What shall
unfortunately.
we-
I don't know. That's a what would I do if there was a coup in the United States? I'll answer it this way. I would hope that we would fight for our freedom as bravely as the people of Myanmar have been doing, because I think it's absolutely inspiring, and freedoms that I think some of us take it for advantage here in the US, although of course we have many problems here as well. But yeah, I would hope we'd be as brave as the Myanmar people if we were faced with that situation.
Josh?
Yeah, I mean, coup in Austria, I don't know. Our military is so incompetent. I don't know if they could do that. But to speak of what's happening in Myanmar, what I would do if I were a Myanmar citizen, or if I was a Myanmar native, so to say, I think what the people are doing is extremely impressive. It's and I mean all parts of it, from the low CDM people, like at the grassroots level, so to say, the PDF folks, and all the way up to politicians that have formed the most inclusive government and most representative government in the energy that Myanmar has had in its entire history. Of course, there's a lot of criticism, and there's a lot of level of improvement, but we should also from time to time acknowledge what has been achieved in comparatively very short time in very, very difficult circumstances. So I think that's fascinating. So I'm personally really impressed, and I don't just say this as a sort of like just saying it like this. It's really truly impressive, I think, how people are behaving, and as Michael said, the bravery of people. Maybe one thing that I noticed with some of my friends, both in like Burmese friends, both inside the country and outside, and often saying like, I feel so useless because I don't hold a gun in my hand and I'm shooting SAC soldiers, right? And I think that's I'm trying to say that this is not, this has a role, but it's not everyone's role. I think everyone should think about themselves. What is their most useful role? For some, this might be like taking up arms and fighting might be the most useful thing they can do. But there are, writers. A friend of mine is a very good journalist, and he's doing an incredible good job with what he's doing. And I'm telling him, like, you are much more useful with what you're doing than just like being in a PDF and potentially get killed, because I don't know how good you are at shooting a gun, or so people that did this, as we said before, this whole revolution consists of so many different aspects, and I think people have to find their role, and people are finding the roles, and I fully support that, and I'm truly impressed by what people are doing, and they should keep going.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for joining today. Thank you for your precious opinion about our country. Thank you so much that you still working for us. For even though you are not Myanmar, you help a lot and you contribute a lot for the for our country. Thank you so much for everything.
Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you so much. Bye.
Thank you.
Yummy.
Yeah,
Can you
see.
speak
Thank you.
Yummy?
Irabo.
Yummy.
Oh, yummy.
Oh,
Yummy.
that's great.
Thank you,
Thank you
Maggie.
so
All
much.
right.
Thank you.
Thank you.